The first duct line editing option is change duct to transition. For this tutorial, we're going to keep it checked. What change duct to transition does is it makes it so that if we make a size change in the middle of the duct line, PractiCAD will compensate for that change by putting a transition at the fitting before or after the change. This will of course be dependent upon the direction you are editing. Currently, we're going to click on this fitting in the middle of 3. You can see by the arrow it is going to edit duct line forward in this direction if we make a change. We're going to double click on the fitting and look at the property width in. If we go to change the width in from 36 to 44, you can see the changes that PractiCAD has made. First, it has made a change up to the transition going forward down the duct line. So in other words, this fitting and this fitting, both properties are currently 44. However, you can see what it's done here is because we were editing forwards and the size change should be forward, PractiCAD does not want to edit the duct line backwards when change duct to transition is checked. What it does is it replaces the fitting that was rectangular duct, and now you can see that it is a transition. Name of the fitting is transition. So change duct to transition, when checked, will put a transition before or after the fitting we change. For example, if we actually hit Control Z to undo and then switch the direction we make the change, notice if we click here, now the arrow is pointing duct line backwards. If we now go and change the width in to 44 and hit enter, you can see that PractiCAD is compensated by putting a transition here. So the direction makes a difference as to which side the transition is placed. If we go to undo that and uncheck our change duct to transition in our library icon, here we can see what PractiCAD would do when the option is not selected. We're going to uncheck change duct to transition, we're going to hit the save key, and we're going to exit out. Now what we're going to do is, once again, we're going to say let's hold the fitting we're going to edit by the in. And we're once again going to click on this fitting here, and then I'm going to right click and go down to AutoCAD Properties. Here once again we're going to change the width in to 44 and then hit enter. Notice what it does. It makes the entire duct line change. What it does is it's actually going to carry the change forward and backwards, up and down the duct line, up into our next fitting. It could be a transition, an elbow, a T, but it's going to go up the line and down the line to our next fitting. So if we'd like a transition to be placed automatically at the size change behind us, change duct to transition should be checked. If we want the whole duct line to change, we can uncheck it. If we are going to use the change duct to transition option, we must be able to make sure that PractiCAD selects the transition that we want to use to fill in that gap automatically. For example, if we currently have our setting checked back to change duct to transition, we click on this fitting and change the width back to 30, you can see here that it's editing the duct line, and PractiCAD, by clicking on the transition that it's been added, you can see that it's using the name transition. That is the specific transition it's using. However, let's Control Z to undo what we've done, and let's change our settings so that it uses the finish length transition or maybe a custom transition instead. In order to select the transition you want PractiCAD to use during the edit, we must go into our Auto Duct button on the PractiCAD ribbon. On the left-hand side, notice that we have the routing button checked. Here we have it under single wall, and we've then got rectangular, round, and oval choices. This happens to be a single rectangular transition change, so we're going to check single wall and rectangular, but obviously we can choose between the three. Whenever we go to make an edit to the software, PractiCAD's options or the fittings it selects are coming from this Auto Duct section. Currently, notice that we have a place called sizing, and you can see that the fitting that is currently selected is the transition. This is the fitting that's currently selected. when a size change needs to be made. Therefore, PractiCAD went back into this section and chose this fitting. If we wanted our change duct to transition option to use a finished length transition, we can switch it right here. If we switch it in auto duct once and then press OK, now we can have the settings set that when we go to adjust this fitting again, it will use the finish length transition. So we're going to double click on this fitting. We're going to move that width in back to 30 and hit enter. Notice when we do that, we're going to now double click on the fitting PractiCAD has selected. We go down to the name and you can see that it has chosen the finished length transition. So we can adjust the specific fitting that PractiCAD will use during this option. That'll conclude the tutorials on change duct to transition.